What's up, everybody? Coming at you at officially March. It is midnight on the East Coast. We've made it to March. We made it about this far last season. We're hoping to make it further with this college basketball season. And we're going to tip it off by talking about the Ohio Valley Conference Tournament preview. If you've been checking out the breakdownsports.com and following us on Twitter at BRKDWN_sports, you saw previously Jordan joined me for two conference previews on the Horizon and the American East. This will be a solo college game breakers tonight. I will be solely focusing on the Ohio Valley Conference. We got a good one coming at you. So if you have any questions, if you're a team, if you're an alum, if you want to hop in and get some comments in, let me know. We got a full week coming up of more conference previews, so you'll see me coming up with a few more guests, working in some guests outside of the breakdown. So definitely be tuning in to us this week, and thank you for always following the Breakdown Sports. So with this Ohio Valley Conference, originally we thought it was a one-dog race, but it's going to be extremely interesting this season because we're going back to the traditional formatting, the first time since 2011 where eight teams will be competing. There will be no bye for the upper seeds. Four teams are eliminated from the Ohio Valley from competing since they have 12 in the conference. So sorry, Eastern Illinois, Tennessee Martin, Tennessee State, and Tennessee Tech. They all finished 6 or 14 or worse in conference play, so they did not qualify for the tournament. EIU was probably the top team left off overall, while Tennessee State had the top defense and Tennessee Tech had the best offense. But those four teams all ranked in the bottom 300 of KenPom, so I don't think anyone's losing any sleep over those teams not being in there. This will be neutral site for the entire time, right outside of Evansville or in downtown's Evansville at the Ford Center. So no home court advantage here. We've seen in the American East and Horizon, they've either had split or full home court advantage. Here, there is none. Belmont is your conference winner. They started off the season hot, 18-0 in conference play, ended at 18-2. So they will be the most interesting team to see if they make it into the mid-major into March Madness as a bubble team if they don't win their conference. I completely doubt they will since they rank outside of the top 75 in KenPom, but that would probably be sitting at 24-3, probably the most notable team and the team that has the most to lose with conference play if they don't come out. And it's not looking too strong. So when I get into our long shots and upsets to watch, Belmont could definitely be on that hot seat. Sorry that Jordan isn't here. He's nailed his past two. I've only nailed one of them, but let's see if I can get into it better. As a conference overall, this had the most blowout games. Thanks to Belmont for that, because while they're healthy, while they're on the 18-0 run, they're crushing everyone. And like the American East, these offensive stats may be over padded just because the bottom four teams in defensive efficiency all ranked outside of the 250. So you had Belmont, Eastern Kentucky, and Jacksonville State maybe padding the stats a little bit up against these weaker defenses, while Morehead State, they were the top defensive team in here, only team ranking in the top 100. So if you're just looking for chalk, Belmont and Morehead are the teams you are circling, but I definitely think there is solid value outside of those. Let me tweet out a quick link and then I'll get into breaking it down. Of course, there is no odds. Once again, this is our third conference tipping off with no odds being out pregame or pre-tournament. Very upsetting from that because I definitely love betting on the conference tournaments. I'm hoping when we get our Power 6 or 7 that we will officially get it. And yes, I include some mid-majors in the Power 6 or Power 7 conferences because it's bigger in college basketball. Other else as a whole, nothing much to talk about as this conference. It's one that was great gambling-wise, and we'll get into it a little bit later. So with no odds, there's a few teams. Who are you instantly crossing out? And I think this has a huge factor into why I think one of the teams can win it and why the teams can potentially be out. So where you could look to cross it off is solely depends on Nick Migzewski's health in this one. because with Belmont and him, Belmont's dropped the last 2 games where he hasn't played. And yes, they had the conference all wrapped up. Maybe there's no motivation, but you saw them post some of their worst splits of the entire season and their last 2 games without Nick Manzinski. So, yes, that's the correct way is Manzinski. So that's where with him being out, that's where I think there's live dogs. If he does play, I think you have to completely cross out Jacksonville State and Murray State completely out of the equation if he plays, since Belmont would draw the winner of that game regardless of who it is. So if he plays, we've seen with him in the conference throughout that 18-game stretch where they're winning by double digits in every game. They're almost covering. They did not have the Drake covering streak, but it was pretty close to it. So if he plays, I think 2 teams that instantly cross off would be Jacksonville State or Murray State. Nothing against those 2 programs. It's just when Belmont's been at full strength, it was not fun getting in front of. They were a team that flew a little bit more under the radar because the Missouri Valley is a more notable conference than the Ohio Valley, but Belmont State did their work. One thing with them is they did have non-conference schedules, but Belmont's kind of had a cakewalk. They lost one of their games to Sanford, so that was a tough loss for them at the beginning of the season. That put them at 3-1, but then that's when they went on their nice coasting streak. So teams to cross off that I would do based on Belmont's health would be Jacksonville State or Murray State, because I don't think they would hold any value going into the conference finals if they did draw Morehead State, because you could just get a better price backing them to take down Belmont if he's playing. If he's out, then I think those are live dogs, and then I would technically only be crossing out SIU or Southeast Missouri, but that's just more common sense. Those 2 teams don't belong. Long shots that I like. So since I don't want to base it off health, the one long shot that I do like is Eastern Kentucky in this one. In this conference to take it outright, because I think they hold a good shot to make it to the finals, and I don't think they would be a large dog against Morehead State. The reason why I like Eastern Kentucky is they're the 3rd overall tempo team in the entire nation, obviously 1st in their conference. Belmont is the only other team that plays with any sort of pace, and the only ways that they can match up would be in the conference finals, where I think that price, if there were odds out pregame, this is being recorded Sunday night, so maybe by Wednesday when this conference tournament does tip off, there could be odds out for it by Wednesday or Thursday. If not, just look to be backing Eastern Kentucky if they're laying points. Eastern Kentucky, their turnover stat is a little influctuated because they pounded up on those in the non-conference schedule early on, and they haven't had the most recent success of the turnover rate. But knowing that they do have that potentially in their back pocket, where they did get SEMO pretty bad a few games, but also in the non-con where they didn't play the most notable teams, it kind of skews them from not having great turnover games when they're still performing above the conference average. Their O definitely has been cooking of late, where they've posted in their past 4 or 5 games, if you exclude their one loss to SEMO, where they are 6-1 in their past 7. Their points per possession has been over 107 in each of those contests except for that loss. So if I can get this Eastern Kentucky offense starting to roll, where they're a solid 3-point shooting team in their conference and overall as where Eastern Kentucky is the top 3-point shooting percentage team in the conference. They're playing with pace. They're getting teams outside of the rhythm that they're not used to. Belmont has cooked each team with the pace. Eastern Kentucky, they just don't have the same quality that Belmont does. But when you play that different style in conference than other teams are expecting, I like to use the St. John's example in the Big East, where they'll catch teams just because here they can prep, but it's a shorter prep period. You're used to teams not playing with pace, and then you come up against Eastern Kentucky and they can smack you. Of the top 4 teams in the conference, which would be Belmont, Morehead, Eastern Kentucky, and Jacksonville State, none of them had bad losses except for Eastern Kentucky. They were the only team with a bad loss, and that came on February 20th against SEMO, where that was the only quad 4 loss out of all 4 of those teams. So that's a big reason why I think it can go chalk. Maybe Eastern Kentucky isn't the biggest long shot you'd be expecting, but looking at projected odds from team rankings or from um, Bart Torvik, if when you load up their tourney simulators, you'll probably get them around plus 600, plus 700, which I would like if Mandzukic is healthy for Belmont in the last game, then maybe the price is the same as it would be, but I think that it would definitely be dropping down. So his health is definitely the biggest thing. The second team with the second long shot, which is the team that plays Eastern Kentucky in the first game, would be Austin P. Solely because once again they would avoid Belmont to the finals, where I think your path is extremely important. And if I've been saying that Eastern Kentucky's offense has been hot, Austin Peay's is the only one that can say it's been hotter over its stretch. Yet they have not been pulling out the results that they've been wanting. However, since January 1st, their points per possession has been over 100 in each game, which they're the only team in the conference that has that type of streak. It's kind of strange to see where they've lost 4 out of their last 5. Yes, one was an overtime game. SEMO did catch some teams and got on a late hot streak, which definitely pushed them into the bottom 7 or 8 team into here and push out EIU. But the bigger concern with Austin P, which is why they weren't a team that I think as strong as a long shot, I think Eastern Kentucky can get past them. But if Austin P do get past, and it's because their offense keeps up this clip, I would not be surprised. Their concern is their defense. Over their past 3 games, their points per possession on defense has been over 110 in each of those contests. They did put up a great streak right before that, so their defense hasn't been struggling, hasn't found their best rhythm. They've played all quad 4 teams other than Jacksonville State in all of February. So that's where they haven't played the toughest competition. When Eastern Kentucky and Austin P came up, they split against each other, each of the road teams taking it. So here at a neutral site contest, I think if you're looking for a long shot to back, these are your 2 teams to get it. Maybe put down a little bit on each, and then you take it because they'll be dogs to Morehead State again. But that's where I'd be looking for my long shots. Who I think can actually win it and wouldn't be considered a long shot. I've talked about Belmont already, but this is where when they're on that 18-0 run, if you load up Ken Pom and look up their efficiency matrix on offense in the conference, they were just owning everything except for offensive rebounding rate and free throw percentage rate, which isn't too much of a surprise when they're ranking first in offensive efficiency, field goal percentage, not turning over the ball, 2-point percentage, and 3-point percentage is the only one where they ranked outside of the top 3. They're just not missing shots. And when you're not missing shots, you don't got big of a chance to hit the offensive boards. And when you're getting the efficient shots, they weren't getting fouled too much. Plus, they're up large in many of the games, so they're not getting fouled late. So Belmont is a team just due to their offensive efficiencies and being the second best defensive team in the conference. They're the highest ranked or highest weighted in both of those areas. They also are the only team like Eastern Kentucky that plays with any bit of pace that is ranked high in this conference or has made the conference tournament. So, I mean, it's just all on the health. Maybe those 2 games were just Belmont not clicking in, trying to get used to it without Nick in the lineup. But Grayson Murphy is someone who's going to have to step up from the guard play. His usage is going to have to exceed up with him, not with Nick not being in the lineup. But it looks like Caleb Hollander, their stretch 4, they've elected with him to step in the 5 spot and just Hollander usually starts, or Hollander was going in and out of the starting lineup when Nick was there, but I think he's been solidified because he logged 26 and 30 minutes his most in most recent teams. He was getting around 20 or less. So that's where I think Hollander is going to be the key guy for them if they're going to make a run deep if Nick does face any time out. Morehead State is this since they're second, they were one of the hottest teams in momentum from Hazelmetrics for the entire season, where just like Belmont, they didn't have as crazy as a run, but they did pull off 13 they have won 15 of their last 16 games. So, and their only loss has come to Belmont, and that was with Nick in the lineup. So that's where Belmont, they're definitely, or Morehead State, they're definitely a team that I think can win it. However, I love backing my defensive teams here, and this is what's been driving them through these wins in the late stretch of it, because they did play a pretty tough non-con schedule with Kentucky, Richmond, Ohio State, and Clemson. So they definitely tested themselves, unlike Belmont, who took a cakewalk there. It's just maybe their offensive numbers aren't that skewed as much, because when you're still looking at conference only stats, which is especially what you should be doing in the Ohio Valley Conference and the smaller conferences here, is Morehead State ranks outside of the top 5 in most categories except for offensive rebounding percentage and free throw rate. They are ranked 230th in the conference, where Murray State, Austin Peay, Jacksonville State, and Eastern Kentucky all have way more efficient offenses. It's just they have a top 75 defense. And this defense is nothing to joke about, where they'll make teams go on these cold streaks where they'll be out of the game. They'll have fallen a little bit behind, and they don't have that lethal offense that can make the comeback. They just suffocate you on defense. They've only had, it was 3 games in the conference schedule where they've allowed their opposition to have more than 1 point possession against them. Obviously, they do not like to play with a lot of tempo, being that defensive minded team. So they do try to wear it out on offense, but the games where they have allowed over 1 points per possession, they still grinded out those wins, except for Belmont. So you have to tip your cap to those there, where they've took care of business in conference play. They were clinical. Their only losses came to teams that were high in the quadrants. SIU, Edwardsville lost. I just kind of take that off because that happened before Christmas. That's so far away. So Morehead State, if you're someone who likes to rely on defense, hope that they can knock a few shots down. And this is where they rely on the 2 point offense. And if all you guys remember Kenneth Fareed, I'm not saying Broome is that type of player, but he's going to be someone who's going to put Morehead State back on the map. Sure, he's just an inside dominator. He's shooting 57% from 2, and he's not their highest, and he's their highest usage player. So they're playing through the middle here. He posted some crazy block plus minuses. So if Broome is easily going to win the freshman of the conference here. So Morehead State, they don't have the seniority or the experience that they do, where they're relying on Broome, but they all have solid pieces around him, and Potter, the Cooper twins, and Baker Jr. to add in that seniority. So that's where Morehead and Belmont, those are your 2 teams why they can win it, where Belmont at full health, they can just smoke anyone. They went 18-0 in conference. That wasn't a fluke. And Morehead State, they're going to grind you out on defense and crush you in some games like that. And especially on neutral site courts where teams go through that long droughts, that's what Morehead State's definitely going to try to make you to do. Your upsets to watch, other than Belmont and the first round games of Morehead State's and Belmont's, I don't think you're going to get anything over a 5-point spread in this conference, where Murray, Eastern Kentucky, and Jacksonville State, they're all ranked 10 points or 10 spots in Ken Palm's rankings with each other. So that's where there's not much separation. And Austin Peay is only like 30 spots further down. So those 4 teams right there who are there, it's hard to call it an upset when they're all evenly ranked against each other. Morehead State isn't much higher ahead in the rankings, so that's where it's anyone who you think can beat Belmont would be your upset to watch. And who I think can take down Belmont would be Eastern Kentucky, since they're my long shot. They're the only one that plays with that same type of pace. Sure, maybe trying to beat them at their own game may not work, but if Belmont's not at that full health, that's where I think they can definitely get into it and get them there. All right, so let's walk through the bracket. This is the simplest bracket that we've had to review so far, because with the Horizon League, we had reseeding and home games for half the conference, and then before they moved to the neutral site. With the American East, you had the bracket inception with the pods inside of a bracket and 3 brackets inside of one. I'm going to walk you through my bracket because this one is the most simple, where we have the first round jumps right into the semifinals, and then we end with the championship 3 days in a row. You start Thursday the 4th, Friday the 5th, and Saturday the 6th. So easily your earliest Ohio Valley stream out. I don't think anyone else is celebrating the opening of March like I am by having a nice conference stream for you guys late at night. All right, so let's get into it with the first game, Belmont versus Edwardsville. This is where I just think, even with Nick healthy or not, Belmont takes the cake, and it's a no sweat. You just write that one right through. Next, with Morehead State versus Southeast Missouri. Once again, Southeast Missouri. I don't want to completely write this off because this is probably going to be right around the 7-point spread. And with Morehead State, they took care of SEMO both times, but they caught them in January and beat them by double digits in both appearances. But we saw with SEMO, they were a team, them and Edwardsville, they kind of got screwed where they went on pauses earlier on. So they had a backloaded February where they're playing games more frequently than not. They've won 4 of their last 5. They took down Austin Peay, Eastern Kentucky, and then Eastern Illinois and Edwardsville. So sure, the last 2 aren't that impressive, but taking down Austin Peay and Eastern Kentucky, even though both are on the road, those are solid wins. So with Morehead State, it's not one where you can just write them through right away. You might have to consider it, but it's just this defense, even though Morehead State did produce 2 of their better offensive games where in this entire time when they've matched up against them in conference play, they got over 1 point possession in each of them. And Morehead State, they were finding that later on in the conference. So maybe in the beginning of the season up until January 9th, it's all red if you look at Ken Palm or if you look at Bart Torvik with their points per possession. Since that time, they've really started to find their rhythm. So that's where I think Morehead State, you easily write them through as well. Hate going chalk, but I can't see Edwardsville or SEMO pulling off an upset. With Jacksonville State and Murray State, I think this is going to be, these 2 games are must watch. On Thursdays, it starts at 7 with Jacksonville State and Murray State. Then Eastern Kentucky, Austin Peay kicks in later at 9:30. Jacksonville State swept Murray State in their 2 games. And one of the biggest reasons why is they don't foul. They don't let teams get the easy buckets by sending them to the line. Jacksonville State definitely grinds them out on defense. Not as efficient as some of the other top teams in the conference, but with Jacksonville State, they're one that the reason why they rank the lowest is they don't force any turnovers on defense. They're just more reliant on their 3-point defense because their 2-point defense of late has been shaky. But it's hard to say that when you've won 7 of your last 8. So they're definitely one of the hottest teams rolling into this conference. The only loss in the 7 of their 8 has came to Belmont. And that's where I don't know, this is going to end up opening at a pick'em. Most I can see it moving to is a plus 2.5 on either side. If you get a full 3, I think you take whatever team is getting points. And I think Murray State is going to be the one that's going to be laying it, even though they've lost the last 3 out of 4. I think that just maybe could be potentially more on name recognition because no one's going to be rushing to back Jacksonville State. Everyone's going to still think that Ja Morant's on Murray State here. And Murray State, maybe it just is because when we've seen their teams be the most dominant, they've had that pure point guard like Ja Morant. That's just been a scorer as well. They've been working with more combo guards with Tavion Brown, who's still playing the role. He's still getting 90 minutes a game, but his usage isn't as high as the numbers that we've seen with Ja Morant there. With Murray State, I don't want to say that they rely on the three too heavily, but this team is shooting the 2 point and 3 point percentages at an efficient clip of late, but that's because these defenses are nothing to ride home about. Right on about 6 days ago, on the road, Murray State got smacked by Jacksonville State. So one of the most recent appearances where they lost by 13 points. Murray State did have a highly efficient offensive game where they put up 1.16 point possessions, but they posted their worst defensive game of the season both times that they faced Jacksonville State. They've posted their worst defensive games of the season where they've allowed 1.37 points per possession and 1.22 points per possession. So I don't know what it is with Murray State facing Jacksonville State, but they just don't seem to have their number on defense. So that's just where I think you have to put Jacksonville State through in the scenario. I know it's hard to beat the same team 3 times, but if you're going to show me even both times you go up against Jacksonville State and you almost get 1.2 points per possession, you're going to allow the other team to get over that amount. And if you really want to go with this one, I would say look for the total here. Both times they were projected to play. The total has gone smashing over where both of these totals were listed under 130, and they both ended up hitting over 150 and 160 in each. So points may be the easiest way to go here, given the recent history in these games. But I would just say back the team that's taking points here because I do think Murray State does keep this one close. I don't see a blowout win like we did on the 25th. So with Murray State through, they would face up against Belmont. And then with Jacksonville State through, they would face up with Belmont. And then with Eastern Kentucky versus Austin Peay, I already broke that game down a little bit earlier. So I got to ride with my long shot that I'm taking, and I'm taking Eastern Kentucky. So yes, I went through with those into the semifinals where Belmont versus Murray. And this one solely relies on health. I hate projecting this game without knowing the status of it because when you're talking, he's going to get in nowhere considerations for National Player of the Year. He might not even get player of his own conference with Terry Taylor, Broome, KJ Williams, or his own teammate Grayson Murphy there. But the loss of Mazinski is just too big to go unnoticed, where if he's not there, I am 100% taking Murray State. I'm going to be backing them on the money line. They're going to be dogs going up against Belmont. And I think the line will skyrocket because even without him, I think Belmont smacks Edwardsville. So that's where this line will be getting, I think it has to be around 9 in this game against Murray. And I would definitely take the points here. And this one depends on health. So I'm going to assume that he is not going to play, so I can take Murray State here. And the next one with Morehead State versus Eastern Kentucky, this is probably going to be the game I'm most excited to watch in this entire conference tournament unless we get a Morehead State-Belmont finish. With Morehead State versus Eastern Kentucky, you're going to see the two contrasting styles go up against each other with Morehead State plays at the snail pace. Eastern Kentucky, third fastest pace in the nation. They ended when these teams met in the season this year. Morehead State took both of them against Eastern Kentucky, won by 13 in the first one, and they only played once this season. So it looks like the second game got canceled between these two, and this one came all the way back in March or on December 14th. So I don't think that's something you can really take into consideration where Morehead State wasn't the team that they were at that point that they are now. Eastern Kentucky has definitely started to find their rhythm more recently, if not. So this is where you're going to see on the neutral site court who's going to be able to institute or determine what type of flow this is going in, because in the half court offense, sure, Eastern Kentucky is still efficient, However, their sets to set up the threes is not as clean and not as open looks as what you get when you get in transition and when you push the ball at that pace. So the old school in me would definitely want to ride with Morehead State here. I've done it in a prior streams for the conference breakdowns where I'm backing the better defensive team, but something just with this Eastern Kentucky team and is what I like about them this season, where I think they're going to make the run to the finals. I think Morehead State, it's hard to rely on the Eastern Kentucky defense to be the ones that do it, but they have the third best defense in the conference. So that's where it gives me confidence that if Morehead State does have that 231st ranked overall offense game show up, Eastern Kentucky will have no issues putting up 70 points on them, and Morehead State might struggle to break 50. However, we've never seen it. But what I like about it is Eastern Kentucky isn't any bit reliant on one player to produce the scoring. They run their offense through Wendell Green and Trey King, with Kurt Lewis being the next fiddle, and then Michael Moreno sitting out on the three, just jacking them up and hitting them at a 48% clip on the season. No one else shoots the three that efficiently on their team. They're all above 33 to 34%, so nothing that's too groundbreaking. So Moreno is definitely your player to key in from three. They're a highly efficient 2-point team as well. So that's just where, yes, they're getting a lot of easier buckets and less contested ones in the open court. Strange to see that with the free throw rate not being up, but it's just a team that's not getting fouled too frequently. But I'm going to ride the team that's won 6 of the last 7, even though Belmont or Morehead State's just as hot. Got to take the better offensive team with a defense that's not on the same level, but is somewhat respectable. So if they are able to get this up in the open court, I like Eastern Kentucky to get to the finals going up against Murray State. And once again here, I just got to go with Eastern Kentucky to ride it out. They were the long shot that I took. So if you really want to go chalk here, you just go Belmont. It's as simple as that. But I'm looking with them not at full strength. I definitely think Eastern Kentucky can be the much better team and the one that would hold value if there are conference odds to come out. I think they're definitely a team that will hold some nice value, even if they do draw Belmont in the finals, because if any other team does get to the finals and Belmont does get caught up to Edwardsville, or they do lose in the semis, you're going to be sitting with loads and loads of value. So don't go crazy. Don't go throwing multiple units. But I think this is one, if you like two teams to target a half unit or maybe target one team with the full unit, if I'm able to find an Eastern Kentucky number, you'll definitely be seeing a tweet come out from me at my handle that's sitting under my name, reast_easy with the Z, if you want to follow me there to see if I do end up locking any conference odds here. So just to run it through real quick, I'm crossing off any teams with odds not looking to back them would be Jacksonville State and Murray State if Belmont is at full health. If Belmont is not at full health, you can talk me into any of 3, 4, 5, or 6 that would hold value if Belmont's not at full strength. I would almost say that I'm going to cross off Morehead State, but that defense is too respectable where they are going to make it interesting. They didn't have that winning 15 to 16 out of nothing, but in this conference tournament, it's only going to cost them one game here, and that's what could potentially do it. Long shot, and the team that I'm taking to win is Eastern Kentucky. So if you can find anything out there, I would definitely advise and backing in that. So coming up on the schedule, we got the A10, we got the West Coast Conference. Those are definitely going to be 2 of them coming up where I do have a guest, so you just don't have to sit here and listen to me try to talk with this whole time solo. Haven't done a solo stream in a while. Nice to get back in there by yourself, listen to yourself talk, but it's definitely much better when I have Jordan or any of my other fellow people that want to come on and join me for this. Always looking for guests to join me talking college game breakers. Definitely much easier having someone to bounce it off, but that's going to be the stream for this one. It's March. We've made it. Let's make it to March Madness. Have everyone stay safe. But until then, you can check out thebreakdownsports.com. Follow us on Twitter at BRK DWN_sports. Got a lot of new content out there with you for NBA waiver wires. Got the hockey pod dropping for the losing streaks. I know they hit on the Ducks and the Sabres are two teams on the losing streak that they touch on. We got the break room episode fresh and just dropped Sunday night for your Monday morning tunes. So if you definitely listen to this one, I would definitely tell you to check into that one where we stuck in the college sphere, but we went more with the college football talk. So yes, we got college football talk on March 1st. Definitely something you'll be wanting to listen to if you read the top 60 quarterbacks of the 2000s. But until then, I'll be back live tomorrow on the Breakdown Sports Twitter. I'll be talking A10 basketball. So definitely one of my favorite conferences to talk as being an alum. But until then, let's hope that Eastern Kentucky can stay safe and pull us out a nice win here, because the last time I did a solo preview stream, Utah State pulled out the Mountain West title for me last season on Sam Merrill's buzzer beater. So hoping for the same effect here with Eastern Kentucky. Until tomorrow, we'll see you then. Happy March.